just to make clear, this is not going to be our only call on this topic. Katie has already committed to a call with us coming up next week. I'm trying to remember the date off the top of my head. It's on the slides at the end. Do you remember, Katie? It's next week.
Yeah, it's the 24th.
Okay.
April 24th.
Okay, that was my first guess. That Katie's going to lead the entire call with Oshkosh Food Co-op, who is just wrapping up their Ownerland campaign in the middle of COVID-19, talking about what they did, what's innovative, but also how they've responded to the crisis and how they've been able to continue to raise funds. So Katie's going to be doing a terrific session on that, and that's going to be more about innovations, responding in the moment. You're not going to want to miss. So today, I'm going to go ahead. So reading off a quick list. I think let's see if I've got everyone. So co-op roll call, Bay City Market, Assabet Village, Assabet Village Co-op Market, Fredericksburg Food Co-op, Village of Williamsville Food Co-op, Free Range Food Co-op, Franklin Community Co-op, nice to see an established co-op here, Common Share Food Co-op, Sun Coast Market, Wild Onion Co-op Market, I'll check with you on that, Wild Onion Market, let's see. Pullman Good Food, another established co-op joining us from Washington. Share Food Co-op is here with us. Did I miss anybody? Oh, Prairie. I see Prairie joined the room. Prairie Food Co-op. Anyone else? Androscoggin. And Chicago Market. And Chicago joined the room. Anyone else I missed? Okay. Thank you all for being here. I wish we could check in on a more personal level. If you want to do that, join us on Friday. And the last slide will talk about, we have an open kind of happy hour discussion download time every Friday where we actually all get to talk to each other a lot more. But I'm going to jump into our topic for today so we can make sure that we get to everything we want to share with you. We had a hard time paring down this topic, and we have a funny feeling we're going to have a hard time stopping it at 1 hour. So all right, so today our topic in the COVIdeo series from FCI is raising capital in rocky times. And we have with us as our guest today, Bonnie Hudspeth from Neighboring Food Co-op Association. Hi to Bonnie.
Hey. Hey, everyone.
And she'll be sharing more of her background with us and why she's specifically the one here sharing with us about this in just a bit. Real quick, some housekeeping. If you can video with us, do. It really helps us connect. It helps you connect to your peers, figure out who's from which co-op. It helps the speaker know that people are paying attention. We appreciate it. If you can't, we understand. Mute when you're not speaking. There's a lot of us on the line. As I said, we're expecting 50 today. This call is being recorded so others can enjoy it, so you can share it with board members who didn't make it. So keep that in mind when speaking, that it will be out there in the public. For check-ins, like I said, we did the co-op roll call. We don't have time for the individual check-ins as much as we wish we did. We're going to ask everyone to try really hard to stay on topic today because this call is meant to be focused and brief so we can really get out information to everyone and make these videos digestible. If you need support that is something outside of what we're working on the call or in more depth than what you're hearing on the call, you can always reach out to the FCI team, to me. Stuart's on the call. Wave, Stuart. and info@fci.coop, or if you have our direct emails, Stuart@FCI, Jacqueline@FCI, we're more than happy to answer questions via email, set up one-on-one calls, and those support services are free to you. All right, a couple things that aren't in the slides is we ask you to heavily utilize the chat. If you've got questions, if you've got comments, if you'd like to raise your hands because you'd actually like to speak to the speaker, please put that in the chat. I have never presented and monitored the chat at the same time quite like this, but we're gonna make it work. And there'll be times that it'll be appropriate for us to stop and handle those, and there'll be times that we're not gonna stop so we can keep things moving, and then we'll take your questions a little bit later. And so that said, we're gonna focus today on what we do know about raising capital from owners in times of financial crisis. This won't answer every question you have, and there's a reason for that. Every financial crisis is slightly different. This one is definitely different than the 2008 and 2011 crises that Bonnie and I have raised owner capital during. That said, there's a lot that we learned during those experiences that will parallel what's going on now. So we're going to start with sharing what we do know about raising owner capital specifically during a crisis. I know some of you also have questions about donations, foundations, innovative ways to raise capital at these difficult times, restructuring how you're doing your owner loan campaign. We're going to have more opportunities to talk about that. Coming up next week on the 24th, Katie Novak of Katie Novak Cooperative Coaching, who's in the room. She's leading a session on her support work with Oshkosh Food Co-op, who is just now in the middle of this crisis, wrapping up their owner loan campaign successfully. She's going to talk with that, and their board chair, Brenda Haynes, is joining her, which is going to be great. They're going to talk about what was innovative and different. They did raise their capital in some different ways, and they're going to talk a lot about messaging through the crisis and how they did that in a way that kept loans and donations coming in. So that's going to be another opportunity to talk about this topic. And I know some of you want to get even more kind of speculative and out there. If we continue to see more demand to talk about some of those options, we will create another session and another opportunity to talk about that. But today we are very lucky to have Bonnie here. Bonnie is not only with the Neighboring Food Co-op Association, which serves all the food co-ops in the Northeast sector of the U.S. She was the very successful project manager of Monadnock Food Co-op, a startup that opened 5 years ago now. Do I have that right? I think it's 5. Is that right, Bonnie?
Yeah, maybe going into their 6th year, something like that.
Yeah, entering their 6th year, and they're in the middle of an expansion and funding and organizing an expansion because they've been so wildly successful. So Bonnie has been in the trenches you are in, and she continues to work with, I think, well over a dozen startups throughout her region to this day, supporting them through their development efforts. So, do we need to reassess your owner capital campaign timeline and why? We're going to touch on that today. Who lens can shift and why when we're in times of crisis, and how to message an owner capital campaign in these kinds of times. One last thought I forgot. We are going to ask if this topic gets there's usually a lot of participation. I think there's going to be a lot with this one. We are going to prioritize voices from co-ops that are in owner loan or expect to be in owner loan, to be actively in owner loan within the next 12 months. That's not to silence anyone else. We still will definitely field as many questions as we can, but we'd like to give priority to those voices as they're thinking right now about plans they were expecting to roll out now, 6 months from now, and how this is going to affect their campaigns. We want to make sure they get some time. Oh, okay. I'm going to start. I forgot I put it in this order. So Bonnie and I are co-presenting because we have both done this. We have both raised owner capital at really difficult times to ask people for money. I was the general manager of Common Ground Food Co-op in Urbana, Illinois. Was not only the GM but the capital campaign manager both times. So did that in early 2008 when we expand our store, to move and expand our store. Out of the basement of a church into a real little storefront. And then we opened in August 2008 in that new location. And then we were so successful, we ran another owner loan campaign in 2011 and expanded to 3 times our size then by the end of that year. So my background is entirely in running, when it comes to owner capital campaigns, is running them in times of financial crisis when people are asking us, really, do you think you should be asking people for loans right now? So that's why I'm here to share with you today. Bonnie?
And I was being asked the same thing. We started, I was the project manager for the Monadnock Food Co-op in Keene, New Hampshire. For about 4 years, doing all the pre-operational development, including overseeing and designing the member loan campaign that we did. So Jacqueline launched their co-op's food store, or their co-op's capital campaign at the beginning of the recession, and we were at the tail end of the recession where people had lost their retirement. People had been economically burned, and we were also being told, please don't reconsider launching it now. And for the love of goodness, don't launch it in the spring. That's the worst time to launch it. But we did. We launched it, and we'll talk a little bit more about what happened. And so we were raising the capital to hire the general manager, all the things that you all are probably in the midst of raising too. And we did our campaign in under 4 months to get a little over $800,000, and then put it over $1 million closer to opening.
And you have your average loan info here. I didn't dig up my precise stuff. That was really good. You want to talk about that a little?
It's precisely approximate. So what was funny is that it was, I forget what the final was, but it was right around the average loan size of $5,000, which is what we had been told to expect. We got more loans than we were expecting, and we had more smaller loans than we were expecting. The larger people with higher wealth gave, those larger buckets to fill, did not fill those buckets as much. And we had people that were recognizing system failures. And we had one of the stories that really has always been in my heart was this grandmother called and she said, I want to take my money. This is for my grandchildren. And I know it's risky, but it is much less risky to put it with the co-op. I don't have much, but I want our money. I want to see where my money goes. And I want to see it making a difference in the community that will be benefiting my grandkids. And we heard a lot of those types of stories. The first person to make a loan was a construction worker who needed access to healthy food. So though, you never know, because I think I started sobbing when I actually delivered the stack of all the member loan offering documents in the mail thinking, oh my goodness, no, we just kept hearing stories of people being in dire straits, and it really felt like it was going to be maybe insurmountable, but keeping the blind faith that we could demonstrate being a vehicle for powerful community change that would address some of these systems failures.
Real quick, our minimum loan at Common Ground for both our owner loan drives was $1,000. What was your minimum loan?
Monadnock Food Co-ops was $2,000.
Okay. And similar experience at Common Ground. Actually, in 2011 was harder than 2008, actually. And when we did the first drive, we were not successful. We were not very successful. And there was a point which we had to stop and say, is it that people just won't lend right now? Or is it the team? I was not heading up the team at the time. And it would have been really easy for us to believe it was the times. We changed up the team and ended up being wildly successful. We found that it had a lot to do with the approach. So we're going to go into a lot more depth on some of this. Some of you were asking some very detailing stuff. We will get there if we have time. We're going to stay pretty big picture, and we're going to let you guys really pick on Katie about about the details of how to put together a campaign. No, I'm kidding. We will get to this stuff, but we're going to get back to some of that detailed stuff. Okay. Now I'd have to tell it I want it to change slides. There we go. So first we'll take a quick minute and talk about how, crisis can affect your timeline. So those of you who were planning to launch a capital campaign sometime in the next year, and I know there's some of you in the room. I know Hudspeth Food Co-op. Fredericksburg is in the middle of a second push. They very successfully finished a $1.7 million owner loan campaign, and now they're attempting a second one, and they launched in March. And I know there might be others in the room who were thinking that they would be launching their owner loan campaign in the next year. So how is this going to affect your timeline? Does it affect your timeline? There's not going to be a universal to this. I will say, and Bonnie, I'd like to hear what you guys did. We did really, so in 2008, the crisis was just starting to unfold when we were going to launch. So it wasn't like it had been ongoing yet. Like, it actually got uglier by the fall. And when we were opening our doors, which we did above sales projections. But so we did pause. It was starting to unfold, and we were going to launch in March. We paused for a month because we wanted to have a big kickoff party. We wanted these things, and you have to stop if you're in the middle of the crisis unfolding, like right now. Sometimes you have to stop and regroup and think about how to do that tastefully. You might have to retool how you're going to raise excitement while being sensitive to what's going on. So we took a month and thought about it. It pushed back our timeline a little bit that time. In 2011, we were well aware of the financial crisis that we were in the middle of. So it didn't affect our timeline ultimately. What about you over at Monadnock?
We were sort of in the situation where everything had lined, all the planes were going to land on the runway, and we really had to have the capital. Okay. And so we talked to a number of consultants that we were working with. We talked to other food co-ops, and we tried to assess the lay of the land. One thing that was helpful was that we were hearing from all of the neighboring food co-ops, this association that we had just joined, that they were actually not only weathering the storm, but that their membership and their sales were growing. And because of the co-op differences we're going to dig into here in a minute. But I think that gave us hope. We knew that, you know, there was another mini recession in 2011, and we knew it was, we didn't know when the economy was going to bounce back, if, right? But we were at the time where the project would have been taken off course if we had delayed too much. We were in the process of hiring a general manager, et cetera. So it didn't affect our timeline all that much. And because it was it ended up being closer to the end of the recession, we had been in it for a couple of years. And so you know, we just proceeded thinking we're going to have to try this at some point. We don't know when this is going to clear up.
I want to mention real quickly, some others mentioned Dorchester is planning to launch a DPO, a direct public offering, very similar to an owner-owned campaign this year. And we have a Long Beach Grocery Co-op is hoping to launch theirs in the next 8 months. Prairie Food Co-op is planning to launch this summer or fall. Did not know that. Awesome. And Pullman Good Food is also on the call, wants to launch in the next 6 to 12 months. So there's a lot of you on the call who are thinking this may affect our timeline. I would say reality is yes, possibly, because every crisis unfolds differently. What I can say from my experience, and it doesn't mean it'll hold this time, because I have done a campaign at the beginning of a crisis unfolding and people not being sure what it was going to do to their lives. Clipper City is also ready to launch, but may wait 3 months. Okay, yeah, if your timing is the very beginning of crisis, like right now, it's more likely to affect your timeline. You guys are in the fun situation, those of you who are planning to launch the next 6 months, that you need to, in my opinion, you need to plan as if you're going to launch. And you need to be thinking about how you're going to pivot to do that. And you also have to be flexible to the possibility that that something may come forward, some information that may come forward that means you got to move it another 3 months or another 6 months. It's a tough spot to be, to not know for sure. I have dealt with it, I know, but mostly pause briefly, reassess the feasibility of your project. Like if you're certain the project's still feasible, that's the first thing. Like we're not going to go deep into that today. We're going to be covering that more in May, but like you're going to have to reassess project feasibility a little bit. You're going to want to contact, your market study provider, and you're going to want to contact Don Moffitt and relook at that pro forma and see if there's any more stress testing you can do to just be 100% certain that you feel good about asking for this money. But if quick pause maybe to reassess feasibility, and maybe to adjust to the waves of public reaction, perhaps. More to tool how you're going to approach it and to think through how your messages are going to bounce off people. But mostly, again, this crisis may be different, but my experience of raising capital in crisis, and everyone I've talked to who's done it, is it doesn't have to massively change your timeline necessarily. And I don't know if you have anything you want to say to that, Bonnie.
No, just that if we look throughout history, not just in our country and around the world, co-ops have come and have been born in times of crisis. We exist to meet unmet needs in our communities. We exist to address systems failure. This is the systems failure of the largest magnitude. And so co-ops helped pull our country out of the Great Depression. Cooperatives have been used in every culture across the world when they have been screwed over by conventional economic system. And so this is actually, I would argue that this is our moment. The seams of our economic system and dominant culture that we have been failing all of us to differing degrees, right? Based on privilege, the amount of access of wealth we have, the seams are being bust open right now. And we know that the cooperative model is the best way to do business, right? It's the best way to build community. It's the best way to ultimately help us take back control of our economic lives and lift up our community so we can all be cared for. So honestly, when is a better time? And if you can communicate that, people are hungry. We are hungry now for an alternative. We are hungry to take back power. Give them the opportunity to take back power. That is the messaging that we used. People, don't you feel powerless right now? I feel freaking powerless. You know what makes me feel powerful? Being on this call with Food Co-op Initiative with Jacqueline, who has responded to crisis by putting together these informative videos to meet all of our needs. Do you know what makes me feel powerful? is working cooperatively with you all, because none of us knows how this is going to shake out. But do we collectively have the wisdom to get ourselves out of this mess? I would say yes. So I would say encourage you to do that in your own co-op.
And I will say on the pragmatic GM level, because I'm
Right.
through these things. No, like this is our balance. She's amazingly inspiring, isn't she? And she's right. On the pragmatic GM side, I would say that yes, these crises are hard. And they can be hard on sales, and we don't know what else will happen. There's some food co-ops right now that are experiencing very depressed sales. There are also some food co-ops right now that are experiencing elevated sales that actually still haven't gone back down to normal, and everything in between. And so where are we coming out the other side? We don't have those answers yet. But I will say my experience of it is that opening something new in a crisis, if you're able to raise the funds, Bill Gessner used to say, from CDS Consulting, Illuminate. If they will show up and they will fund it, then you have sold them something that is far bigger than groceries, and they will show up to support it. And I found that to be true. That we took the owner loan campaign and owner man as a test of the whole concept of opening what was practically a startup, because we were coming out of a little basement of a church. So yeah, for what it's worth, yes, your timeline might need to shift, and you're going to have to get super flexible about that possibility. But our number one advice would be to continue to plan as if you're not going to have to, and think about what that's going to mean about your approaches. So getting into approaches, possible audience shifts, things that we both saw. Bonnie, you pointed out a couple that are really important to know. If you do, I won't say if you do it right. If it works, if your community is going to buy in, if you have the connection to your community that you need, and we're not gonna have time to cover that. I'm sure Katie could also give a lot of talk about this. If you don't have the deep, enthusiastic connection to your community, responsive, back and forth relationship where they feel connected to their co-op, when you launch, it doesn't matter when the time is. It's still gonna be very, very, very challenging. If you have it, then what we have found is that more people will lend less. Now, I thought maybe that was me at first, because I am just naturally more talented at raising money with people who are more of my economic persuasion, and that tends to be true for everyone. I wasn't a home run hitter with with people with more money. And I know it was me because I had a board chair who was of high net worth, who decided to pitch in on working with high net worth people, and lo and behold, he got more of them to participate. So I thought that was the main factor, but it was interesting talking to Bonnie, talking to many others, that actually we all consistently saw this, that we had more participation than would have been projected by the industry. But our average, now, Manonix average loan came in at $5,000. Ours, and back when we did on a loan, that was considered high for an average loan when I did it. We were hoping for an average loan of $4,000, and we came in about $2,700 actually. So Bonnie, or Katie, actually, if you want to throw in any comments about that.
I'll comment while Katie's unmuting, and I want to hear what she has to say. I would say that one of the things, as I mentioned before, the average loan size worked out to where we thought it was going to, but the buckets and the actual behind the scenes was very different. We had thought there were going to be many more larger loans, and there were not. There were I'm talking loans $10,000 or more. There were much fewer than we had planned for or anticipated. There were many more loans in the $2,000, which was the minimum, $3,000 and $5,000 range. We had a number of people asking us, can we work with our neighbors to put together money so we can make the minimum loan requirement? And they did that. We said, you guys have to figure that out. Get one member owner to write a check, figure. So there were a number of conversations like that people were so hungry to be a part of it that they really wanted to make it work.
Katie, do you have any thoughts you want to share?
Well, I'd just say that that's part of the reason why raising capital this way is so inspirational, I think, is that it's about all of us coming together to do what we can. And in times of crisis like this, we see that a lot more people will come to the table, and perhaps at a lower level than they might have during other times. So I think that's one of the remarkable things about co-ops. It's that it's all of us doing what we can.
Absolutely. Do you want to drop in one hint? Something that I wish I'd done a little different that I figured out late. I kind of hinted at it earlier. Actually, what we heard, you will hear a lot of, do you really think you should be doing this right now? You absolutely will hear it. I know you must have heard it too, Bonnie. Like, do you think this is appropriate for the co-op to be doing right now? You will hear it. Be prepared for it. Be ready to respond to it. And part of the response we developed over time that you can have right away points to what Bonnie said, points to what Katie said, which is, first off, we couldn't say it, but we did have people say to us pretty consistently, how right now are you more high risk than putting my money, on the market? And we're not. And so that was something high net worth people picked up on. And I wish we'd thought about that sooner. But I did not know the thought patterns. So it took us a while to figure it out and to bring that board member in. I would say high net worth individuals actually turned out to be very interested in the co-op. They didn't make big loans. Like Bonnie said, like we had hoped to have like a couple 20s and 50s. We didn't. But that didn't mean they didn't make $5,000, $10,000 loans, even 2,000. Heck, we'll take it. What the approach that we didn't see coming was they still have money that has to be invested somewhere. Yeah. They are very aware now that the risk is pretty much, it's pretty much roulette everywhere. And so they became interested in taking a portion of their portfolio and putting it into some creative community investment projects. And they were very open to that convo. If someone talked to them who could speak their language about, of course, you're not going to take your whole portfolio this year, but taking a portion of your portfolio and why I'm doing it. We found both times that someone, if we spoke to that audience correctly, they did get involved. They didn't make the bigger loans that we hoped, but bigger than a lot of people could do. So I'm gonna pause for a second. One problem I'm having, I don't know why I've never had any previous call. It's not always letting me see chat while I'm doing slides. So I'm gonna take a minute here and pause and look through some of these questions. And then we're gonna jump to the second section Bonnie's gonna lead. That's gonna be it's going to be really fun. So setting lower minimum pushes the average down. Yeah, so absolutely, maybe. It depends on your community. So these days, I think most everyone, Katie, you might be able to speak to this, suggests a 2,000 minimum. The reason is, honestly, all those little $1,000 loans is a problem that you're handing off to your future staff. And it's really hard to manage all those little loans. And sometimes, is it worth it? And so, and also, a lot of people can do two if they can do one, and it's to kind of encourage people to go there. That used to be kind of an either or, and I think now it's kind of pretty universal. Are you seeing that, Katie?
Yeah, and the integration of a donation option into a campaign helps kind of offset that. So if $2,000 isn't doable as a minimum, many co-ops are integrating a donation option in their campaigns, which of course could be at any amount, and allows participation below that level.
Excellent. And they're going to go super in depth on that on the Oshkosh call next week. It's a piece that they definitely put into play. I'm just going to double check that I'm not ignoring anyone. Is Heather Lazakas or Ben Sandell on this call? Okay. I didn't see them, but it's kind of hard to see everything while I'm doing the slides. Okay. So would there be legal issues with a group loan? And I think, Bonnie, you were saying it was theirs to sort out, but can you speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, we couldn't recommend. We just said you have to sort it out yourselves, because the legal issues come between the friends or between whoever is coming together to make the loan, right? Ultimately, it's going to look the same from the co-op side, because one member owner is going to be putting their name forth with a loan. You can't have two people doing that. So it's really, the risk is on them. If they divorce, if they are no longer friends, right? Like, they have to figure that out. The risk is on them, but we had probably like 5 or 6 people do that. It wasn't a ton, but they were so excited about it. And they like brought in champagne bottles, and it was like a testimony of their friendship. But yeah, the legal murkiness isn't on the co-op. It's on whoever is partnering to make that loan.
Okay, good to know. So Village Williamsville, Mary commented, so you need a few sales pitch scripts and approaches, a few new sales, and to know when to close the deal or walk away. Yes, that's a nice synopsis. I would say that it's more, language to protect the co-op. That is going to show up in your legal documents, which you need to create with a co-op focused lawyer. And they also are going to help you vet all of your marketing materials and make sure, how can I educate you on the line to protect yourself throughout the campaign, and what wording you can use, what wording you can't use. So we're not going to go too in depth on that today, and you absolutely need to hire a legal professional to help with that. As much as we can tell you our experiences, Katie can tell you her experiences, we're going to tell you that that's the place you'll have a conversation with a lawyer. So Clarity wants to point out they're planning to ask for 100% participation from their ownership, and to communicate that if everyone contributed 3,000, we would make our goal. And their goal is over 4 million. Is that correct, Jess? I think that's right. Okay. Yes,
yeah. It is 4 million.
Okay. So they're trying something. I mean, it turns out there are other co-ops that have financed almost their entire project through owner capital, but back when the projects were a lot less expensive. So I'm still going to put out there that Prairie's trying to do something that's never been done before. They're putting together some terrific planning on that. And there are slides from their up and coming presentation on that. If you want to access those, reach out to me and I can connect you. So yes to new approaches, but I think I'm going to hand over to Bonnie here, because I think she's going to speak to this terrifically on the next couple slides. But the thing is, you have to come up with a perspective on doing the owner loan campaign or the owner capital campaign in whatever format that you 110% believe that you, and that is actually the more important pivot in my mind. And then the language and all that. But if you start a campaign going, well, we hope this will work and we think it's a good idea, but we know it's kind of risky. Those things are true. You know, you don't know for sure it's going to work. It is kind of risky. But the pivot we need to make is, right now, this is a worthwhile risk because we can accomplish X together, because other co-ops have done this successfully, because right now, and we're going to be doing some little mini videos promoting some of this coming up soon, food co-ops are doing amazing things. And we're working on an article with Civil Eats, yay, about how food co-ops right now are proving their value. Food supply chain issues, food access issues, like, you have to believe, absolutely, it's a risk. It was always a risk, but we believe it's a worthwhile risk and an investment in our future that we, and here is why. And I want you to spend the emotional time getting there, and you don't have to be there today. We've only been in this thing for a little over a month, okay? So you may need a little longer to get there, but that's where you've got to get to run these campaigns. You have to be able to say with complete conviction, your team has to be able to say that this is a worthwhile risk and this is why. And with that, I'm going to hand the next slide, which it doesn't like to let me change slides if I'm looking at the chat. I'm going to hand this one, I'm going to hand things over to Bonnie.
So as I went on my little rant before, based on Jacqueline's great question to me, this sort of dives right into messaging, but the story that I would urge you to put together is, this is our moment, right? How is your co-op going to build resilience in a broken economic system that only benefits a very few people, right? So and to just know that you're, as leaders of your co-op, you're not the only people who are hungry for an alternative. So you need to help demonstrate the alternative, the vision, what your co-op is going to be creating in your community. And so that's, we have cooperated since the beginning of time, right? Since the Stone Ages, because our survival as a species depended upon our ability to work together to meet our common needs for food, shelter, and safety. And that's happening right now, right? Cooperation is as old as humanity itself, and we need it more than ever right now. So we could talk about a lot of examples, but I wanted to focus on 3 that I think could be mostly universally common in all of our communities, which is risk, and I'll talk about risk in a minute here, but that you can lift up other food co-op success stories with capital campaigns around you. That is important. Jacqueline mentioned, how safe do people feel putting their money up for risk? What we found with the folks of higher net worth that made those few larger loans, even though they weren't as large as they expected, they needed to see that many other people in the community had already put their money in first. So we didn't even talk to them. We did not even pick up the phone to ask them for a meeting until we were 3/4 of the way through our campaign, which felt scary because we didn't know if they were going to come through. But it just shows like that they wanted to see that there are enough people in the community had shown, we believe in this. We believe that this is going to be successful. So the more you can, and the people, everyone cared about saying, yeah, show me how this is going to succeed. We don't even know what a co-op is. Like, show me examples. So I would say what's lucky for you is since Jacqueline and I have done our campaigns, there have been so many other bigger, probably more successfully run campaigns. And you have amazing people like Katie and Ben and Heather that can help you create those campaigns, right? And bring forth stories that you can point to. Another thing that's happening right now a lot, food system, the total abysmal support nationally for our farmers and our food system is really coming out in this crisis. So talk about what your co-op is going to do to build resilience in your region, whether it's support of your local farmers, the percentage of local products. We have all those numbers that are available, right? The stability of a market, a year-round stable market for the farmers and producers in your region. There's lots of stories that you can ask any food co-op about how they've incubated hundreds, if not thousands, of local businesses by being able to come in and test their products out with member owners, sample and store. There's lots of examples you can talk about around strengthening the food system. Another thing that is so important right now, creating good jobs in our communities, especially not knowing how bad this recession, whatever we're going into is going to be. We know it's going to be not great, right? But the fact that you can talk about how jobs at co-ops are different, they are going to stay in their communities. The grocery store is not going to close overnight because it's not generating enough profit. So this is the opportunity to tell those stories. I would also use this opportunity to lift up how co-ops treat their staff. So what we did is we talked about Neighboring Food Co-op Association had done a study of the food co-ops in the network and basically how, on average, how much were they paying their staff. And at the time, it was 18% higher on average than the comparable food and beverage industries in this same region. That story was important for people to hear. And I would say right now, do you know what people are saying to me that are going to a conventional store? That the owners of the store, Hannaford's, do not want their staff to wear masks because it makes people feel unsafe. That is utter bullshit. Meanwhile, our co-ops are doing every measure to keep both staff and customers safe. There are so many examples of co-op difference and care for employees and care for staff. So tell some of those stories and use this as an opportunity.
And I would say that definitely we're going to be helping you guys get some of more of those messages out. We heard, thank you, from Fredericksburg. We love hearing your feedback, by the way, about what you guys need support on. It really does help. We heard from Oshkosh and Fredericksburg that if we could help with just finding, because they're seeing them pop up in their feed here and there, but finding those examples of what co-ops are doing right now that is really serving their community, that is really proving their value, and start sharing some of those out in a format that you can share them as content in your social media, start showing people why co-ops matter. So we're going to start doing some of that. So some of this you're like, well, that's all nice and pie in the sky, but things are kind of a mess right now. We understand, like, again, I launched a campaign when people really weren't sure what was going to happen on the other side, but the stories already exist to tell, and you're going to need to tell yours, but we're going to help you get some pieces together about what's happening at different food co-ops that you can base some of your optimism about why a co-op can do more for your community now than ever. Did you want more here, Bonnie, or next slide?
I think let's go to the next.
All right.
So in terms of messaging, we are not just community owned. We as cooperatives are inseparable from our communities. So what does that mean to you? And I shone a light here on Urban Greens, one of our members that opened last year, woo woo, after 10 years of organizing. But this is a message that they put up. Urban Greens, co-op is community, with this picture, and I think that is really important right now. And to tell that story, that we are inseparable, that the staff are going to be from our communities, that most of the leaders will be from our communities, that the farmers are our neighbors who are growing the products on our shelves. And so I kind of want to use that frame too of like, what is normal? What is risk? And who do you trust? Think of these as places to jump off for your messaging. So we are not going back to normal. And normal only existed because we normalized horrible things, right? Putting people over profit, exhausting resources, disconnection, hoarding, hate, all this stuff that is being propagated. Do we want to go back to that? No. So our co-ops are vehicles to make the economy work for us from the ground up, starting with food. Use that as a message, right? Okay, so what's at risk? Co-ops have a high rate of loan repayment. So ask Katie or Jacqueline or someone that actually has some stats if you need them, but that the risk is less, right? Mm-hmm. With a co-op right now than with many other alternatives where you would be putting your money. And unlike many other investment opportunities, the money and decision-making, accountability stays in our community. That's important. And then who do you trust? I think the recession that we started this, the Great Recession back in 2008, remember the Wall Street bailout? People started understanding that they had no idea where their money was going. This like fast money at crazy speeds being extracted from community. So talking about trust, and who do you trust right now to make good decisions for your family, for you, your neighbors, your friends, or banks or corporations where money and accountability are hard to trace, right? Money moves fast and is disconnected from people in place. We are reconnecting your money with your neighbors. Your money is going to be providing jobs for your neighbors. Your money is going to be providing food on the shelves from your farmers, right? And I think it's time we realize that we need to trust ourselves more than trust anyone else to meet our needs. And I mean our collective selves. What would you add to that, Jacqueline?
I would add, well, everything you just said. And I think actually some of this, I think it's actually in some ways, and I'm going to shop this because I'm not the one who's going through an own campaign right now, I realize, but I have done several. And I think the messaging will actually be easier in the next couple months than it was a year ago. And I know that's really, really hard to swallow me saying, but we have been going through slowly moving away from those messages really rocking people. They're like, yeah, I know, like, yeah, collective stuff is good and community, yeah, and I'm pro local economy, but people aren't going to farmers markets as much. People aren't buying CSA shares. They had been wildly down. CSA farms were in a lot of trouble. Food co-ops were growing very slowly. There was this, yes, but yeah, that's cool, but I don't have time. And you know what's happened? CSA shares are through the roof and they're higher than they were 5 years ago at the moment. And that's a very good indicator of where people are going with how they feel about who they trust their money with and and what they're willing to take risks on and what they're willing to go out of their way for. Because honestly, it's kind of easy to get into a spot where they're like, well, what are you selling me? Oh, what interest rate are you giving me? How is this going to look at my portfolio? You will see people pivoting very quickly right now to a very different perspective of, they may not say it, but what you're giving them is not just an opportunity to invest in their community in a future grocery store, which are awesome on their own. You're giving them an opportunity to feel like they can do something right now, powerfully, that will build up the collective they now are very aware they always knew they should do something about, but now they just want to throw down. And how can I do it? The co-op, you literally understand that one of the things, I hate the word sell, but one of the things you're selling them that they want, that they're looking to be part of, is the opportunity to do something about a different future that has a plan, because they don't have a plan right now. You already do. All you have to do is unveil that we have this plan. already to make this better and different. And one of the things I was talking to the interviewer, the journalist at Civil Eats the other day that we talked about is she's like, co-ops were starting to get like, I don't know, just a little less, you know, like everyone likes them, everyone wants one, you know, but just less shiny. And she's, and all of a sudden, she's like, she's a member of a co-op. Everyone is like, oh, like maybe we didn't change the world the way we hoped when we first opened our co-op, but maybe we took for granted how much we were changing the world. Look at this. Look at people taking care of each other. Look at us shopping for each other. Look at how much I feel connected to my community and hope because my co-op's here. Look at what it's doing for the farms. Look what the farmers are doing for them in these times to keep the food supply chain happening. Like maybe we did create something, like maybe we can create a different world together. And I think as we start being able to unveil these stories, we're starting to see the press picking up on it. I posted one today. That one from Civil Eats is coming. We're going to do some short videos as we start to unveil what co-ops were already doing that has created a different possible way forward that we're going to need to build on. I think the messaging in some ways is going to be easier than ever about why to do this.
I would totally agree. And so take advantage of the opportunity right now where you're feeling the feelings, right? To get together with a team and message, regardless of when your campaign launches. Because it's funny, all the things that I've said, I've been saying at the CCMA gatherings, but what is interesting is they didn't land, it doesn't land in good times. It doesn't land with as much impact because people are like, oh, well, we're all right. Okay, yeah, that's like maybe icing on the cake. But I'm like, no, because all these essential ingredients that make cooperatives different, that put people over profit, are for times like this of crisis. That is when you see the difference. So shine the light, and it's the best time in a lot of ways to start these conversations. Even if you shift your timeline, you're going to know that best by talking to people in your community and talking to experts. But please don't delay on like figuring out what your story is and what your messaging is while this need is so fresh. There's also fear freezes people. And this, I think I just want to name that because I felt fear. I know a lot of us have been feeling fear. And so what pulls you away from that fear? Action, something that you can do that's tangible, that's hopeful, and vision of something different, a vision of what is going to get us out of this. How can we help not be in this spot where we are? So, and that's what you all are creating. I've been seeing phenomenal messages, by the way, from startups. Like, y'all have roadblocks, roadblocks, setbacks, sites falling through, staff falling through, board members falling through, how to respond to mini crises. This is a big crisis. But the whole time you've been organizing, you've been having to adapt and shift and use cooperation to get to where you are to be on this call today, right? So that's what we got to tap into now.
Shirley asked a question that I just want to address that brought up something that I should have thought to share. I don't know if you saw this too, Bonnie. Really good point was about interest rates. We actually, so I did one, remember, right when like everyone's like, oh my God, a crisis is happening and what's going to happen to, we've been in this crisis forever and it sucks and we're not rebounding. And when we were at the beginning of the crisis, which is where you're going to be if you're starting a campaign in the next 6 to 8 months, what I found is people realize if they had money to put into anything like this, if they could find money to do that, they weren't interested in interest rates in the same way they were in 2011. People were starting to think again, like, well, how much can I get out of this? What we heard a lot more of when you could get the message across and get people interested in investing in a co-op as a way forward in the future, in the change that they wanted, was we got a lot of willingness to take lower interest rates because they were getting negative interest off everything else that they had locked up, any money they had locked up anywhere else at the moment. So it really is, I'm gonna talk like a strategist, it's a good time to get comfortable seeing how low you can get people to go on interest, because it will make a difference to the viability of your project long term.
Right, and you just have to help them connect the dots, which you will in your communication documents, in your caller script, etc. Okay,
so I got a question from Bill I do want to get to. But again, I don't want to lose this opportunity. We have Katie here. Katie, thoughts that emerged for you that you might want to share before we take a couple more questions?
I think one thing I'd mention is that what you started with, Jacqueline, your connection to the community really is a critical necessity for success, is that you have to have that connection already. So for those of us who aren't, initiating a campaign in the next 6 to 12 months, please utilize this time to build that connection with your communities. In addition, it's never too early to begin conversations with people of higher net worth about the possibility of your campaign on the horizon. Sometimes people in that category are used to being courted. They're used to a lengthy, time-consuming process where they're asking you questions and you're asking them questions, and they want to meet with this person and that person. And so the earlier you can begin those conversations and make those kinds of connections, the better off you can be as well.
I'm really glad you got back around to that, because I would say the same. It's not my forte. This is why you should work with Katie or Ben, or that is not one of my forte areas. But one thing I do know is that the ones that we courted early, even if we didn't do a great job, had more time to think about it. I do find they come in late on the campaigns.
Yes.
But that's not the same as don't court them earlier so they have time to think about it.
Right. They're going to come in late because they are the people who they tend to like to save the day, kind of, so to speak, or want to feel like they're really making an impact, and they are. And certainly we can help them feel that way. But, let's just say a 3-month campaign, you will probably have been courting them for 6 or 9 months before that. So they do come in at the end, and you're going to be busy during your campaign too. So you want to do as much of that courting ahead of time if you can.
Yes. I want to, Mad River, awesome comment. I would say, we're maybe the least conservative community in Illinois outside Chicago, but that's not saying much. So we use a lot of the same thing, focusing on self-reliance. We had a lot of people who probably at this point voted for Trump, however you want to take that, who made loans. And for them, it was, they remembered self-reliance. They remembered farms. They connected to all that. This is a universal message. So if your community has a good mix of political perspectives, be very careful to think about how to share a message that can resonate with both, because they exist. You don't have to cater to one or the other. You can bring them all under the umbrella. There is a message in there for everyone.
I would just add, what are the greatest unmet needs in your community that would resonate for them, right? Because it might be jobs, you have to figure out what those messages are, and you probably have if they're your member owners. So just to include that in your communication, because if they are already member owners, great. If they're not, doing what Katie said, going to your community and making those connections, now is a really important time to figure that out. How is our vision appealing to our whole community, not just a segment of it?
Bill had a great comment and question. It kind of piggybacks on Mad Rivers, and I think Mad Rivers was actually a response. I just wanted to say, Bill offered that, they're organizing in a community where many of their neighbors are active duty or retired military, still very much believe the U.S. being a great place. They're more not the people over profits over people thing, like that, corrupt corporations. That's not a message for them. And again, I don't think you have to use that message. It can be the right message for your community depending how your community is politically. But I think the one that resonates with them, Astabet did right away. I thought it was amazing. A victory garden training online, long distance. Resonate back to the Great Depression. Resonate back to self-reliance. Resonate back to getting American farmers bringing food directly to market again. Go back to go back to those things. It's a different angle on the same message, and it can be just as appealing. So you're just going to tone it to your community, but under the core of the message isn't really that different. Comment real quick from Fredericksburg. They are in such a unique situation. So Fredericksburg Food Co-op, as I said, successful $1.7 million campaign last year, need to do another little push, and was planning to launch in March. They considered not, they were making the decision as we were starting to even kind of understand what was going on. And they decided to go forward mostly because they're so close to opening. They're supposed to open this October, and they saw it as an opportunity to connect to people. He said they're making progress, and all the calls have been very heartwarming. We feared some folks would be upset with us, but that did not happen. And I love that. Thank you, Adam. That is what we expected to find. And Rich Larochelle, our board chair from that caucus, said, and I think this is exactly what's going to happen. We kind of figured it would be soft in the beginning. We wanted to see a certain level, but we didn't expect to make it all a couple weeks because we were making contact, we were building relationship, and we were wrapping their minds around the idea that the co-op, has something very valuable to say about the future. And as people get used to what is unfortunately in a lot of ways going to be the new normal, they're going to have time to mull that, and they're going to come forward. And it's going to take last time it took them 8 weeks, I think it was 8 weeks, Adam. And this time they're expecting it to take a little longer, even though they're raising less. And I agree with that. I would expect it to take maybe 2-3 months at least, because people need a little time to wrap their minds around whether they're okay and how much they can give. But starting the conversation now is an incredible way to really build a relationship with them and put the co-op first in their minds. And not too many of you are going to be in the situation of Fredericksburg. I don't think anyone's planning to launch before this summer. If I'm wrong about that, please throw it in the comments. Okay, so I'm starting to see some comments about happy hours online, some really cool stuff. By the way, we will send you the download of the chat as well, because so many great ideas come up in the chat and just from talking to each other. And then you want to remember, oh, I want to talk to those people over at Franklin. So we'll send you the chat too. So please keep throwing those ideas over there. We may not pivot to that conversation because we only have a few minutes left here. Any last comments, questions about raising capital from owners and messaging raising capital to owners right now, or how to know when to pivot your campaign if yours is coming up soon? Anything related to that? And feel free at this point to unmute if you want to. Just know that 5 people might do it at once. Any comments, questions specific to owner loan? Okay. I want to thank so much Bonnie Hudspeth, Neighboring Food Co-op Association, for giving up her time, sharing her knowledge and her inspiration. She's inspiring as heck, y'all. So, right, like, I had one review, and I will not name names, who wrote me and said, you guys have me, Bonnie has me crying right now. So, and that is one of her gifts. So we didn't get to these real quick. They're going to be in the slides. Bonnie, you want to say a quick word about these quotes?
Oh, just that one of our, someone who made a loan said, it seems fitting to think that our co-ops, at the time it was 800 or 900 member owners, as neighbors coming together to provide for each other and to bring something amazing into our community. And that was really resonant of the campaign. And Bill's question was awesome. I would just say, as you're developing your messaging, put together a document. And when you're meeting with people, when you're on the phone, just respond to them and ask them what they're hungry for, right? Put yourself in their shoes, and you know how to talk to your community because they're your community, right? So just figure out what those messages are, because you'll know that.
I love that, though. I think you, Katie, I would all say exploratory conversations, and start talking to people about, and find out which sentences, which phrases really got a reaction, and start taking notes with some of your stronger supporters in the community, people you feel like you can test stuff out with. It would be also a good way. I like the hint of that in there, that in your answer. And this quote from Alexi is great. At some point read it, but basically they thought they were going to have to, like, they were in the middle of 2008. They actually launched later when people were really aware of things were hitting the fan. We had Goldman Sachs and all sorts of fun stuff. And they thought they were going to have to cut their owner loan campaign in half. And actually they found that they raised more than they expected. People were so eager for an opportunity to move their money. Because remember, nobody thinks right now that they're going to make good dividends on anything. What they're thinking about is, how can we build a different future and not go back to where we were?
Exactly. And that co-op was 30 minutes away from our startups community. And so we put that in the member loan materials. We put that as a quote of, like, this is a general manager of a 40-something-year-old co-op. This is their experience. So just to shine light. So do the same thing, because you're having opportunities right now of brave co-ops like Fredericksburg that are experiencing it, and you're going to be able to talk to them and share their testimony.
Excellent. So I do want to let you guys know, because I try not to run over. Today's recording and slides will be made available via Google folder. All of them are in the same. So there's one big folder with subfolders for each event. You're going to get that. If you register today, you're going to get an email with links to all of that. But if you've been getting these calls, it's the same folder. There'll just be a subfolder with today's date. In there will be the slides, the chat log, as well as this recording, and any other supplemental materials people requested. I don't think we had much. Oh, a list, NFCA, if you're willing, I'll send the link with the email, the link to where they have kind of put together a list of theirs, kind of keeping track of all the things different co-ops in their regions are doing right now that are amazing and relevant. Upcoming tomorrow, very excited, Siobhan's here on the call today. Siobhan Mitchell, board chair of Assabet Village Co-op Market, will be joining us. I'll be interviewing her about pivoting your organization. She would say it was a little haphazard, but very early on, they did what we keep referring to as the pause and assess. They picked up really early they were going to need to do that, looked at their governing, looked at their business development, and looked at their outreach, and made some decisions about how their organization was going to pivot and why to meet the current times. And I think it's going to be, you're going to learn a lot from, I'm going to pull it out of Siobhan's brain. Sometimes she knows more things than she thinks she knows, and I'm going to show you how brilliant she is. So join us tomorrow to hear all about that. I forgot to put it on here. I'm surprised about that, but tomorrow night at 4:30, we're going to have our weekly download. We call it the FCI download. That's a Facebook event. Just go find that on Facebook, and the link is in there. You don't have to register. There is no registration. Show up, leave when you want, show up when you want, come in, come out. I'm really just creating a space for you all to talk to each other. If you have questions of me, I'll answer them, but it's a really good place to hear from your peers, share ideas, and we get ideas from you. There's actually a session that we're going to be scheduling soon coming up because of an idea that was shared by Free Range Co-op on those calls, and everyone said, yeah, we need that. So come be a part of it. It's fun. And then Monday, Smart Outreach with Prairie Food Co-op. Do not miss this one. Jerry Nash, their outreach coordinator, has done an incredible job of, he's going to tell you about his philosophy. He knew the co-op needed to serve the community now. If you're not launching an owner loan campaign for at least 6 months, everyone should be doing it, but especially those of you who are going to be launching 6 to 12 months, you need to connect to community now. You need to show how vital you are to the community. And he thought of ways to do that with his team, not him alone, his outreach team, that both very, very needful and useful to the community, but still did not create a lot of work. Did not create a lot of burden when people didn't know what was coming next and how much they could commit of their time. He's going to talk about their philosophy on that and show you 2 examples, successful examples for them already that they've done that you can copy and build off of. Very excited about that. We love sharing your guys' brilliance back to your peers. And then ownership growth in tough times on Wednesday. We've got Katie Novak coming back not only Wednesday, but Friday. Wednesday, she'll be here talking to you about how do we ask for ownership in times like this? How do we keep ownership growth going? And she's even going to say, I think, boldly, that she thinks you should be able to do ownership better than ever right now, and then she'll build off that. So that'll be exciting. And then she's back Friday to tell you about Oshkosh's experience with owner loan campaigns, along with Brenda Haynes, from the board president of Oshkosh. Thank you all for being with us today. We love doing this with you. If you need some specific one-on-one, whether it's just emotional processing, sometimes we're just co-op therapists, are answering questions, email us at info@fci.coop, and we'd love to connect with you. All right, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Great questions. Great to have you all on.
And thanks again to Bonnie.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody. This was super.
We love you all.
Nice antenna, Bonnie.